And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So.
Wasting no time in going on offense against former President Donald Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator JD Vance.
These guys are creepy and, yes, just weird as hell.
In the frozen tundras of Minnesota, where the snow is thicker than a JD Vance policy paper, and the sarcasm flows stronger than Ohio's river of regrets, Governor Tim Walz has finally snapped. And folks, he snapped hard. Because after months of listening to JD Vance sputter his way through Senate interviews like a malfunctioning Alexa, Tim Walz decided it was time to debate Vance. It was time to channel his inner stand-up comic, political dissident, and midwestern dad energy all at once and deliver the roast of the century. Tim Walz looked around as if scanning the landscape for some shred of normalcy. And then he dropped a line so raw, so devastatingly accurate, it echoed through the Midwest like a tractor, backfiring in a cornfield. These guys are creepy and weird as hell. Now, Tim Walz isn't known for hyperbole. He's a former high school teacher, a National Guard vet, a guy whose political superpower is practical governance and knowing what the hell a hot dish actually is. But even he had to call it like he saw it.
Something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off.
Look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. Just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it.
Naturally, JD Vance couldn't just take the loss. After being verbally dunked into the political cornfield by Tim Walz, he did what all extremely normal, totally not weird politicians do when confronted with criticism. He got weird about a handshake. According to Vance, the real scandal wasn't Walz's takedown of his ideology, or the fact that his Senate speeches sound like rejected TED Talks delivered in a Cracker Barrel. No, the true offense was Tim Walz once awkwardly shook his wife's hand.
Talk about weird with Tim Walz. I don't know if you guys saw the rally yesterday, but afterwards, his wife comes up to him, and Tim Walz does what any normal Midwestern guy would do, seeing his beautiful wife on stage after his speech. He gives her a firm handshake. Right? That's pretty weird. When I see my wife after a speech, I give her a hug and a kiss because I'm excited to see her, and she's my wife.
Somewhere between a dry policy debate and a high school student council election, JD Vance decided to weaponize the most aggressively Midwestern gesture in human history, the overly formal, slightly stiff, completely harmless handshake. The implication was unclear. Was it disrespectful? Cold? Too firm? Not firm enough? Did Walz commit the ultimate sin of maintaining eye contact for more than 2 seconds? We'll never know. But that's not all JD Vance had to say about him.
So I think that what it is two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable in their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name-calling instead of actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
Apparently, in the mind of JD Vance, if a governor calls you creepy, it's not because you said something creepy, it's because he lacks policy confidence. If the vice president side-eyes your latest rant about masculinity being destroyed by oat milk, it's not because she's confused, it's because she's insecure about infrastructure. To Vance, every critique, every joke, every Midwestern roast session is simply a smokescreen hiding a deep, dark truth: that Democrats are terrified of his policy genius. And by policy genius, we of course mean the recycled think tank talking points he occasionally blurts out between awkward Fox News appearances. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home.
Even the reporter looked up from her notebook with the expression of someone who just accidentally opened a file labeled cursed. Even for a reporter who'd covered all 4 years of the Trump administration, this moment hit differently. This wasn't a spin. This wasn't messaging. This was a U.S. senator, on the record, implying that Tim Walz's marriage might be cold and distant because he didn't go in for a dramatic, full-body kiss like he was returning from World War II. Let's be clear, the only thing more ridiculous than the claim itself was the confidence with which JD delivered it. He didn't hedge, he didn't wink. He dropped the take like he was unveiling a Pentagon memo, but Oh boy, Vance has much more to say about Walz.
I will say about poor Tim Walz. I know we have some great Christian people here, and I'm sure people of other faiths. If you would, spare a prayer for Tim Walz, because he's got the toughest job in American politics. Tim Walz has got to go out there and try to convince our fellow citizens that Kamala Harris is fit to be president of the United States. That is a tough job, ladies and gentlemen.
And there it was. Delivered with the gravitas of a man who thinks saying things confidently makes them true, Vance unleashed what he must have believed was a thunderous takedown, a political haymaker. But let's be honest, this wasn't a knockout. It was a slow-motion eye roll dressed as a sentence. Now we know what he was trying to do. He was trying to be clever, trying to plant the idea that Kamala Harris isn't fit for the job, without actually backing it up with, evidence. And in doing so, he took a swipe at Tim Walz, whose apparent crime is existing on a Democratic ticket.
Kamala Harris has been vice president for 3.5 years, and because of her leadership, or lack thereof, North Carolinians are paying over $1,000 more per month to afford today what they could have afforded when Donald J. Trump was president. Because of Kamala Harris's leadership, we saw today the private sector lost 28,000 jobs. And manufacturing, we actually lost 46,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector just in the last month. I will say about poor Tim Walz. I know we have some great Christian people here, and I'm sure people of other faiths. If you would, spare a prayer for Tim Walz, because he's got the toughest job in American politics.
He claimed, without a trace of irony, that under Kamala Harris, the economy has hemorrhaged 28,000 private sector jobs and 46,000 in the manufacturing sector. As if Harris, a vice president with limited constitutional authority, personally walked into every factory in America and unplugged the machines one by one while whispering, "For the greater good." But he didn't stop there. He warned America seriously, warned that Kamala Harris wants to run alongside Donald Trump, that she secretly covets his spot on the ticket, that she will at any moment ditch Tim Walz like a bad prom date and slide in next to Trump like it's the world's worst buddy comedy reboot. Sir, what are we doing? You can't call Kamala Harris unelectable and then in the same breath claim she's plotting a Machiavellian takeover of the Trump campaign. That's not political analysis. That's a fever dream with a guest appearance by Paranoia. JD Vance sounds like a guy arguing with himself in the produce aisle. 1 second, Harris is a national punchline. Next, she's a diabolical mastermind secretly engineering a bipartisan coup. Which is it? Is she flailing or rising? Tanking or scheming? Destroying jobs or jobs stealing yours, JD? As JD Vance was spiraling deeper into his personal Bermuda Triangle of contradictions, another voice entered the chat. Not just any voice, the voice. One coated in bronzer, seasoned with grievance, and powered by an eternal loop of self-adoration. Donald J. Trump.
He's a very liberal man, and he's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Now let's pause and appreciate the emotional range of that statement. Shocked and thrilled. It's the kind of reaction normally reserved for finding out your least favorite cousin is dating your ex. Confused joy, smug delight. A splash of pretty schadenfreude with a twist of ego. And of course, Trump said it with that unmistakable tone, the same one he uses when he's pretending to compliment someone right before throwing them under a golf cart. Because let's be clear, when Trump says he's thrilled about Tim Walz joining the ticket, he doesn't mean, wow, I respect this choice. He means, this will be easier to run against than a pillow fight in a wind tunnel. In Trump world, being thrilled about something means you think it's a disaster for the other guy. Trump is surely thrilled about what he said here.
JD studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! JD Vance literally wrote the foreword for the architect of the Project 2025 agenda.
Yes, that's JD Vance. The guy who took a scholarship from America's most elite institutions, rode a golden escalator of venture capital to national stardom, and then had the audacity to turn around and say, look what these people did to me. It's the political equivalent of crashing your neighbor's yacht, then blaming the boat for turning you into a populist. Walz didn't scream it. He didn't have to. The facts spoke for themselves. And if it weren't enough hypocrisy for one lifetime, Walz also pointed out that Vance wrote the foreword to a book by one of the chief architects of Project 2025, a dystopian fever dream masquerading as a transition plan, all while Vance pretends to be the voice of the common man, despite not having been within 10 feet of a union hall since the book tour. JD Vance wants to talk about credibility? He sold his for stock options in a Fox News contract. He wants to talk about jobs? Project 2025's whole goal is to eliminate them, especially if you're a public school teacher, a civil servant, or anyone who uses nuance in a sentence.
This is what these folks are focusing on, spending all their time. Like reading about two male penguins who love each other is somehow going to turn your children gay, and that's what you should worry about. But here's what I'll tell you. It's a fact of life, some people are gay. But you know what's not a fact of life? That our children need to be shot dead in schools.
As the avalanche of hypocrisy piled higher, and JD Vance sank deeper into his pit of phony populism and bad faith outrage, Tim Walz delivered what may go down as the most devastating and accurate mic drop of the entire election cycle. He reminded America that while Vance and Trump were out there fear-mongering about public libraries and yelling at drag queens, they somehow found time to fixate on a children's book about two male penguins who love each other and that this type of stuff shouldn't be allowed in school. But no time at all to do anything about kids getting gunned down in schools. That's not a punchline. That's a national disgrace. Because for all of JD Vance's ranting about protecting kids, he's shown exactly zero interest in the one thing actually killing them: guns in schools. You can't make this stuff up. In Vance world, penguins are a public safety threat. But military-grade rifles in classrooms? Hey, thoughts and prayers. It's not leadership. It's cowardice in a red tie. In the end, JD Vance is right about one thing. Tim Walz does have a hard job. Not because of Kamala Harris, but because every day he has to share a country with politicians like JD Vance people more outraged by who penguins love than by who's pulling the trigger. If you made it this far into the video, make sure to watch our video on Pete Buttigieg absolutely going in on JD Vance. You won't want to miss it.